Hello and welcome to another episode of Sonic Touch. It's the show dedicated to making music on touch devices. I'm Nick Batt, editor of SonicState.com.
And I'm Gaz Williams.
We're 21 today, aren't we, Gaz?
21.
How it feels to be young again.
Yes, we get the USB key to the house.
Excellent. And today, what we're going to do is a kind of Cubasis special, because as we know, Cubasis has come out for the iPad amidst quite a lot of kind of big dealery, I suppose, when we call it, wouldn't you? That sounds like kind of the wrong thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, Cubase, that's where it all began, really, wasn't it? That was the first proper computer, fully featured computer sequencer.
Yeah, way back in MIDI form,
Yeah.
and certainly in audio form as well.
Absolutely. So the granddaddy of this whole kind of computer recording thing. So interesting to see what their first foray into a fully featured iPad-based DAW is.
So let's take a look. Okay, so here it is. I'm going to launch it. This is actually running on an iPad Classic or iPad 1, although it does actually say that it shouldn't be able to. I have decided to give it a go. So just to prove that it will actually work there, whereas some applications just will not. So this is running I think iOS 5.1 or 5.2. So it does run on a lowly one. Gaz will show us a bit more on the iPad 2 later on.
Yeah.
So what it basically is like a DAW for audio and MIDI. We've got, if I create a MIDI instrument here, I can select what kind of instrument I want it to be. There are, 75 instruments?
Something
70
like that.
instruments, and you can preview each one, which is kind of handy. They sound very GM kind of style,
Yeah.
and there's a few kits.
I think they're derived from the Halion range of sounds.
So, we can pick up a few here and what have you. I'm going to concentrate on the MIDI side of things because that's what I've essentially got here. So, and it's got a couple of other interfaces. Right, so if I now go to, I can play it on the keyboard, and I can change the size of the keyboard and the sort of width of it and the where I am. The other thing that's very cool, which you've probably seen in the demo, is I can program chords into these buttons. So if I wanted to edit that, I press the E button and then I might change a couple of things. Now it plays my new chord, which actually is really useful because you can do some pretty interesting things with all of that.
Nice house piano style-y.
Yeah, well, I'm going to load a project now, something I prepared earlier. So if I now go to Media, Projects, NB, if I take that one and double click, comes with a project called Lucky 7, which actually isn't a bad little tune. And what I've done here is I've created, this is the other thing you can see, you can pinch, and it's quite a responsive interface, even on the iPad 1. This is just a selection of MIDI stuff that I've put together. So if I now, I can come out of Solo. It's got things that are familiar to Cubase users, which I'm not a Cubase user. So pinch and zoom, so you can see a way around. And then you can do things like if you click, you get the piano roll, and you've got editing capabilities. If I want to delete that, I can see there's a double note there. It uses very much the bottom of the screen for all of these things, so that's kind of cool. And then you've got a mixer page, where you can see all your various tracks. So if I now just say solo, this classic piano, this was an electric piano section that I put in, and I play that. I use the pads to play these in. And it's a very 80s kind of, 90s kind of house vibe. So then I can bring a few more instruments in. Let's have a look. Everybody put your hands in the air. And you can hear it's actually just starting to fall apart a little bit there. But what I can do is I can add various different effects. If I open up the inspector, you can see that there's my kit. I've got insert effects. So if I now get rid of that and put my track on and see if I play here. I've got an amp sim, which is a fairly basic kind of model. I can change models around. It doesn't sound all that great, but it's just something to sort of flavour it up. I've got a compressor. I can add, oops, hold on, if I come here, if I want to add another effect, I can select it from this selection. I've got reverb, chorus, flanger, and they're all okay. I mean, they're not sort of going to set the world on fire, I guess, but they're kind of all right. Then I've got send effects, which are reverb, delay, and I can add again one of these as a send effect as well on the mixer. So enough to be able to let me kind of make some sounds
Yep.
and I stop that there and sort of build something up. And I found actually with this, I'll just go back to my screen, you know, I made a little arrangement here and I found that it was kind of okay for putting together a tune. And I was, you know, it was fine. I didn't record any audio.
Right, so it's just a MIDI project.
Yeah, but I could get reasonably macro. So if I just press play again, my little piano part, and just zoom it out a little bit. There's things that you can do which are kind of cool. So this is like the velocity, and I suppose if I do that, I can get like fades, and this would fade. I'm guessing the velocity is on the instrument. So there's quite a lot of, oops, that's the only thing that you find a bit. You've got to be a little bit careful when you're touching things.
Because the grid is currently off at the moment
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
going to switch the grid onto bars. So yeah, and you know, things like just sort of cutting patterns, I found that was kind of very useful. And you know, things like copying as well. Oops, I'm still doing that again. This is the one thing that kind of did actually, where it fell down a little bit, was some of the more sort of macro, the functions that we come to expect from a DAW, when because you're creating something, it's like, oh, I could just do all of this, and it doesn't quite get there in the same way. But again, all I was really doing with this was creating MIDI, adding some effects on, doing a little bit of basic arrangement, and it worked quite well for that. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to send this over to Gaz because there's for two reasons. One, because this the engine inside the classic iPad is probably not really designed to kind of do all that much, and also then Gaz can work on some audio and give us a little bit more insight from that point of view. All I have to do is I go to Media, I go Share, and then I'm going to email this, and then I can send it to Gaz. Take my word for it, I've emailed it, and now by the magic of editing, here it is.
Okay, so here's the email, and it's got a little Cubase logo on. So if I touch it, it'll say, look, open in Cubasis. So there we do. So Cubasis opens. And as it loads in, we should see it not opening on the project.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, but there it is, NV1. So double tap to load it in, and there it is.
So now that runs, and it runs exactly the same, right?
Yes. See, I'm straight away having a problem with the zooming, I have to be honest. Because, look, say for instance out like that, and I want to zoom in like bar 1.
It's zooming, it's not zooming relative to where you're...
Not really. It's a bit fiddly, so you have to pan across then. I'd like to see them improve that. I mean, I'd like to be able to do just like Cubase, you know, touching put the play bar and just pull down and zoom, but you can't do that. That would be intuitive for me. Okay, so here we are. Here's the project. As Nick said, we can resize it here. So obviously all MIDI so far. One thing I really have to say I really like, I'm a long-term Cubase user. I've been using Cubase now since 1992 or thereabouts. Right. A long time. But the look of this is, it really reflects the current Cubase, and things just like the way that the little animations of these things open in the inspector, all of it looks very similar. Like the channel strip. You know, there's a real kind of uniform look across it that I really like that. So, and things like at the top here, we've got, you know, solo defeat and mute defeat. So, you know, I can just simply hit the thing, yeah.
I mean, again, all of these things are very useful because navigating large amounts of data and arrangements and channels on a touchscreen when you have no key commands and the things that we're used to of using in the DAW, you know, you kind of need those little tricks, right?
Yeah, I agree. And like if we go in the setup here, we can see audio. Look, the polyphony is currently set to 32 voices. I think it can run up to 48 voices on an iPad 2. I think if I was running this on an iPad 4, I think that would have at least 64 voices polyphony. Okay, so let's now, I'm going to add an audio track. I click here. Now, if I just open up here and get the channel open, you know, very, very familiar look for Cubase users, you know, so we can monitor the input channel. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a guitar. This is a lovely vintage Burns guitar. And I'm going to use the Apogee Jam, which is a guitar interface.
Right.
Which I've got just a little...
Oh, hold it under there a second. Okay. So what's that? It's got a little... Oh,
I've got a little just two-way jack thing there. So that means I can plug the Jam sort of straight into the guitar body, which I find quite handy for. Okay, plug it in. Now, okay, the green light is on, so therefore recognised it.
Oh, and there it works.
Yeah, now
There's a bit of latency there, isn't there?
there's a bit of latency.
Is that more or less than any other dedicated program, you think?
It feels maybe a bit more, but it feels it's just on the threshold of being playable.
You couldn't do that with a live vocal, maybe. That would be.
I think a vocal, I think you struggle.
Or you'd need an interface that would give you direct monitoring. That's what you need.
Yeah,
okay.
definitely. Okay, so let's just drop the track into record. Metering is quite nice though. Can't see though, we haven't got a tuner.
Oh, we can't have everything. Stop moaning.
All right, let's take it back. Let's drop into record. Okay, so with that recording, what can we do? Well, again, double tap opens up, like it does with the MIDI inspector, opens up the audio editor. And there's a reasonable amount of stuff we can do here. We can trim, reverse it, normalize, put a sort of fade in and fade out on there, but no effects, sort of.
No kind of destructive processing for
not
like remove DC offset and some of the other things that you see. Well,
Yeah.
I suppose that's fair enough.
That's okay.
I mean, it's
There's a bit of stuff there. So, okay. Now, I recorded that. So we could add effects. Let's see what the guitar amp's in. Crackle.
starting to give up a bit.
Yes. So.
I mean, we should say again, this is on an iPad 2, so an iPad 3 or whatever is the current iPad on its own, which is the iPad 4, isn't it? And the iPad, you will get more performance out of it. There's no doubt about it. But
Yes.
there is going to be a finite limitation to what you can do, right?
Yes, and I think this is interesting because this is the first time I've actually seen the iPad 2 start giving up the ghost now. So a little bit sad. Feel like my little iPad 2's kind of struggling.
Ready for the scrap heap.
Ready for the frisbee out the window.
No longer 21.
Okay, so we can see that it's a fairly, decent amount of stuff on here. With the audio, we can do the kind of, I can trim. If I wanted to sort of slice a bit there, the way you do that is you'd put the play bar as like an editing tool, and then select what you want, and then I could sort of split.
Right, so you could do some basic editing.
Do some basic editing. What I have found though is that editing is not a great deal of fun. You can do basic editing, but when you want to start getting into things, you start to kind of
Get up against the limit.
Like an example would be, I'm going to add another audio track, and now I want to drag that little clip I've just scissored, and then I wanted to drag it down. Oh, it just moved a touch then.
Right, so you don't get that. It's just interface smarts, isn't it? So when you're moving something between tracks,
Yes.
you want it to be, what do you call it?
Constrained.
To the start point.
Yeah.
These are the kind of little things that make a difference to.
Yeah.
I suppose in some ways it's a positive and a negative because
Yes.
you feel like, oh, I can do all of this stuff in here because it feels like a familiar interface.
Yes.
It gives you the impression that all of these things are possible. It's like, okay, I can do it. But
Yes.
in fact, there are issues. And also, if you go to the MIDI editor, so if we go there, and then say I wanted to zoom in on this note, you see I'm not zooming in on that note, I'm zooming in on where my fingers are. And whereas, there are other programs like GarageBand where it does work. So if I wanted to zoom here, I'd be doing this.
Yeah.
And it would actually zoom in and out around the point at which I was zooming. And those are the sort of things that they sound very minor, but they actually make quite a lot of difference to the general operation, and these are the things that make it more of a frustrating process than perhaps it should be.
Yeah, I think they really need to sort out this zoom function because it really does wind me up. I feel that it's counterproductive then.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so what we can do now then, though, and I think this is a nice thing. If you're a Cubase user and you've got Cubase on your desktop computer, then you can open up your Cubase's project in Cubase.
Ah, okay.
But this is something I have not yet done, so I'm interested to see what it'll do with all these MIDI sounds.
Okay, let's check it out.
Let's try it. So the way we do this, hit setup, I'm going to turn on the Wi-Fi server. This gives me an IP address. I put that now, I'm going to go to my laptop and I'm going to put that in as a web address.
So you get the file tree.
We've got the file tree, yeah, so we can go projects.
So that's actually just a web page basically, isn't it? So
Pretty much, yeah. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to click it, download that. Now,
not the whole project and all the stuff.
no, I got to import the audio separately.
So that's the audio.
Yeah, and I have to actually download linked file.
Oh dear.
Bit of a kerfuffle, hey?
That's not quite. I mean, it'd probably be easier actually just to email it or do it another way.
Yeah.
So, but now we've got those in there. Now what happens?
I can open that into Cubase. But before I could import that into Cubase, I needed to go to the Steinberg website and download a little plugin to enable Cubasis. I go to Cubase, I go import, and now, because I've put that little plugin in, I've got Cubasis project as an option. Click that. I've got this on my desktop, so I'll just choose to open it there. Okay, and in comes the plugins.
Oh, it's kind of constructing it, but from. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So the Cubase is. Oh, it's completed. How exciting!
Okay. What we can see is that the Cubase, it looks the same, but the colours haven't come across. Just close all these windows, get them out of the way. But we can see the arrangement is complete. Should we have a listen?
Dare we? Okay. So it's brought the audio in.
Yeah. Ooh, what's going on there? Let's have a look at the mixer. Okay, so some of the channels are maxed out, which I'm sure
They weren't. If we
let's have a look. Flick back to this. Let's get the mixer up.
No, that's not the same, is it?
It's not the same. Okay, so it's not brought an exact version in. Now,
It's brought all the MIDI and the other side.
the MIDI's in, and the sounds are roughly there. So if we were to listen to piano,
Yeah, that had a reverb across it.
let's just have a listen to the piano on here.
I lean forward there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a.
It's roughly the same. But I noticed that those drums that you put the guitar amp on.
Yeah, it's taken up a bit more space than it was in the other mix.
Yeah. So let's have a
So
look.
I mean, it's not quite the same then, shall we say?
No.
What else has it done? So it needs. So the amp sim's obviously a little bit different.
Well, if we look, it's like the full-blown Cubase.
Ah, right. Okay. So,
Whereas we had a much more restricted version of it.
so it's suffering from too many options in many ways.
But I guess ultimately, though, we can see that although it's not quite as slick,
It's got the edits.
Yes.
It's got the MIDI as is. It's
Yeah.
got the arrangement.
yes,
It's just. I mean, I suppose the thing is you can only come this way. But if you were sketching something out, you'd be bringing it in and then you work on it, with more macro and more ability to kind of more tweakability and a sort of more usable interface, I guess.
yes, and currently you can't go back. You can't go back.
That's a shame.
That's a shame. So yeah, so I couldn't export this back to the iPad. So
Right.
it's-
Well, I suppose that makes sense because you can do so much more in the full-blown version.
Yes.
And to kind of like distill it down to something that would work.
Yes.
I mean, I suppose it would be useful. It could say export to Cubasis
Yes.
as stems, and then you could bring stems in, and then maybe do overdubs of
Yeah,
if you were
yeah.
doing little percussion, whatever.
could
Some
be useful.
ideas or recording some vocal ideas or whatever.
I did read that I think that is in development, some form of export.
Right.
But this is an early release, it's only just come out, and I can see plenty of room for it to grow. So maybe
I suppose the thing is it was so promising, and I found myself kind of throwing ideas around quite quickly, and I really like the pads and the MIDI interaction and the sort of basic editing. But when you start to get deeper, you start to realise the sort of limitations of a small interface. It's not really a limitation of necessarily the software or the hardware. It's the fact that you're trying to do all these things that we're used to doing with big screens or key commands, which make things like this much quicker.
We experienced this with Auria, didn't we? Very similar.
Yeah, it's the paradigm falls down when you get into the detail and want to work fast and do things that you can do.
However, I have to say, Cubasis is roughly somewhere in between GarageBand and Auria. It's somewhere roughly in the middle. Right now, for me, GarageBand gets
still got the edge.
Because it works
to the limitations.
To the limitations.
I suppose the thing about this is also, I'm guessing you can record stuff multiple channels if you've got an audio
Yes,
interface
you
that
can.
works. In fact, I think Steinberg say that some of their USB interfaces will give you a certain number of channels in and out. So you're going to be able to do those kind of things. But it's once you've done that, you really are not going to want to start comping, cutting and pasting, doing little macro edits. You're just going to want to get it into Cubase or something else as quick as possible, really.
Yeah, and I mean, like a compelling use of something like this could be that if you wanted to go somewhere specific to record your guitar, or if you wanted to record your vocals in a cave, or those kind of things, is quite nice as an extension to the desktop. Just send a mix down across, record your vocals there, ping them back across. You can see that sort of thing being quite nice.
Yeah.
As it currently stands, but as a complete DAW environment, it's got a little way to go.
Right. So Cubasis is available now. I think it's $50 or 35 quid.
Yep.
So it's not the cheapest of apps. It's a premium app, really.
Yeah, it's pretty much an Auria kind of price point, isn't it?
But it has got a lot of, for people who are perhaps Cubase users and want a familiar interface, it has got a lot to offer. So, I mean, I wouldn't be put off by our criticisms. I think what we've kind of just realised, like I say, is an inherent limitation to the complexity of the DAW workflow in such a small device.
Yeah. So staying within the Cubase world, there is another app that's just come out as well. And it's got a very similar graphical appearance to this, but it is actually a control surface specifically for Cubase.
How fortuitous that we have the laptop set up and Cubase open then.
So let's have a look. Cubase IC Pro. So it looks for a computer with running Cubase that's on the network.
So it knows. How clever.
Yeah, there was an app. There was a little plugin that I had to download and install into Cubase to enable this.
So it's like a little server app that we've seen with the Ableton Live controllers.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It haven't needed anything like that. No, it's just a plugin for the Cubase specific device.
Okay.
Yeah. So looking at it, can you see familiar look to it?
Oh, and it's taken the arrangement block as well. So
yeah. But it doesn't zoom what you see on screen.
No. Okay, but it shows us what's. But that's neat.
It's kind of neat. We've got all our channel faders, and if we look on the screen now, I'm going to call up my mixer, and we can see, I can operate multiple channels, and you can do nice things in that you can, if I go here, I can say zoom level, medium, so I could fit a lot more channels in with only kind of audio functionality, or I could go down again to small, and then what that does is that just shows me almost like a meter bridge.
So it has got metering then, it does give you that kind of stuff, yeah?
Yeah, so if I put the track into play...
Oh, let me turn that down.
We can see the faders going, and then let's put that back to normal level there.
Even with it's all incomplete arrangement, I see, yeah, so the meters are going there.
Yep, let's just pull. Now, what I'd like to be able to do though is, I'd like to be able to drag, well that's looping at the moment, let's just take loop off. I'd want to be able to pull this here, but I can't. I have to actually stop the playback. I can move the play bar so it'll come in there, but I want to be able to do it
While it's live.
whilst it's live.
Again, you're asking an awful lot of it, because essentially it looks a bit like Cubasis, but
That's
without
true.
the colours, you know,
No,
but
I mean,
it's not.
I can rewind it here. I can control it there.
Okay, so you want a bit more tactile.
Although when I press fast forward, it stops.
Okay.
I want to effectively jog and shuttle it, really. Okay, but I can jump to the left.
Oh, okay.
You know, I can jump to the mark. Now, and also, what I do quite like is, like, let's just zoom this out a little bit.
Oh, interestingly enough, it handles the zoom in the correct fashion,
Yes.
where Cubasis itself doesn't.
Yes.
That's interesting.
So let's just jump back to the left locator. I have got this thing where I can drop markers on.
Oh, that's neat.
And the markers then come along here, so then I can just jump to markers. And cool, one thing that's pretty cool is, I'll just stop playback. If I was to move the left locator, say over here, and right locator over here, I can add loop markers as well.
Ah, okay.
So loop markers are great because I can touch a loop marker
and you've got.
and it'll give me a loop around that.
Is that
particular point.
fast enough to be able to play almost like clip launching?
Let's have a look. Let's make another loop marker over here. Perhaps I should have done this with the grid on, like that. Let's add another loop there. Okay, I did a couple there by mistake, but
So if we're in play, 3, 2, 3, 4.
not bad.
Yeah, you could almost, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Cubase turned into Ableton Live Shocker.
Other things we can do. We've got a load of buttons here. Okay, like shortcuts that can open different parts of your project. And if I keep dragging across, all the way across, this is like the arranger controls. If I come here, hit this, I can configure all of these.
Right.
I can, and look, if I come all the way across, there's even a
slots
blank
you
page.
can make your
And what's
own.
really cool, I really like this, is if I hit plus, this, you can go in, you've got everything, pretty much every single command that you can get at Cubase.
That's neat. I'm kind of confused, as it almost feels like this is what you want to connect to Cubasis rather than to Cubase, because if you've got Cubase, you've got your keyboard, you've got everything there anyway. I mean, what would you use this in a situation where you were away from the computer and you needed to kind of, you know, I don't know, you're over at a synth or something doing some work and you just want to operate it? I mean,
Yeah, that could be one reason. You know, you could use it for sort of vocal tracking. You know, you could just hold your iPad and microphone and then just be able to, you know, especially the loop, you know, having all your loop, verse 1, verse 2,
okay.
etc. Also, I mean, as a mix console, you know, I can see that being pretty cool.
Right.
You know, being able to do this thing here with the faders, being able to, I think just having all these buttons as well. You could have it on your desktop.
macros and have lots of little.
You could have your macros and just having shortcuts. And these buttons on the bottom here, they let you configure, you know, whether you want the
how you want the screen layout
how you
to
want
be.
the layout to
Okay.
be, yeah, you know, so you can have
Just different modes
Just
and what have
different
you. I like
modes
that.
of
I
layouts.
like this arrange layout. I think that's really quite interesting.
yeah.
I mean, it doesn't provide an awful lot of information.
No,
it
but
must-
one thing that if I was to change a colour, so if I, for instance, I went to my laptop and changed track 1 to red, you can
change
see-
another colour. Let's have a look. Oh right, okay, that's neat.
yeah. So
Well, I mean, is it neat? It's just neat that it can do it, but why would, you know, you sort of, you go, look, I'm changing stuff. It's sort of one of those things that makes you go, wow, but when you think about it really hard, it's like, well, that's probably not all that necessary.
No.
It's just nifty.
yeah, it's nifty. Yeah, but it is missing some crucial things in my opinion. Like there's no sends, you can't, or you know that, or it would be lovely to be able to, you know, to touch the EQ,
yeah,
that
could
kind
use
of
the
thing.
touch surface for those things, yeah, sure.
And
You could, what about automation?
well, it is there. It's not that obvious in that the automation buttons are missing there. But if we come into our options, we can toggle the record monitor switch to a read-write switch. So if we do that, then I can then
okay.
arm the tracks for automation.
Well, that's useful then, so you can actually at least be writing some data in there.
Yes. You know, so pretty cool. I'd like to be able to make the tracks, you know,
zoom and the actual full
I'd like,
size.
I'd like, so you got nice long travel.
Good sort of length things. Yeah.
Don't think you can do that. So,
But all in all, I mean, it doesn't float your boat entirely, but it sort of needs a bit more deeper integration, in your opinion, right?
yes, I mean, it is kind of close, but no cigar.
It's available from Steinberg on the App Store. It is also available on the iPhone, right?
Yeah, and that might be partly why some of the functionality is a bit limited, because it is, a lot of this stuff would work well. As I've tried it on my iPhone, makes a lot more sense, some of the design choices.
Okay, but it's quite a premium app, isn't it? It's what is it, £11.99? So that's going to be around like 15, 16 bucks. So once again, another premium app for Steinberg.
Yes, but pretty good. I'd like to see a bit more development on it though.
So once again, you can get both of those apps from the App Store, published by Steinberg. That's Steinberg Cubasis and Cubase IC Pro. But thanks for watching. And seriously, if you have any comments, please do leave them below.
Yeah, because it really helps us we often, overlook things or just,
maybe get something wrong. God forbid. But once again, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
That's episode 21. Over and out. Bye-bye.
Bye.